Hello everyone, and welcome to another game of World of Warships. Today's replay is from SteelHanjo, and he is in the Amagi, a tier 8 Japanese battleship. He is on the map Two Brothers in a standard battle. Well, he's top tier, which is nice. There is only one destroyer per team, and there is a carrier, but it's 6. And unfortunately, it's a standard battle. And standard battles tend to be a little bit less exciting. Now, there is no objective to fight over, which means usually in a standard battle people are taking it very carefully with lots of long-range boring engagements, because there really is no incentive to actually be aggressive. Now, on the bad news side, we have a Gneisenau and a Nagato pushing through the center. We also only have 2 ships on the left side. I think they said earlier in chat that they realized that they only have 2 ships there and that they are going to just be delaying the enemy. Now, if you have few ships, you gotta play it a little bit more passive. But we don't see so many enemies there yet, so it doesn't look like a disaster so far. But obviously, there's guys now, the Nagato, that are going in the center. They are missing, like, they are not reinforcing the left side, they are not reinforcing the right side. And they're probably doing about absolutely nothing. Going through the center is a very bad plan. Now, it's not like bad plans never work. They are bad plans because they very rarely work. That sometimes people often forget. Like, they see something, they've seen it work, and they're like, hey, that plan works. But if it works like 2 times out of 10, that's a pretty shitty win rate. And that makes it a bad plan. Okay, so that said, we now see a lot of ships on the left side. This would be, for me, an indication that you want to push the right flank. Well, I mean, either that or you go bend. Right now, I mean, it's still equal ship-wise. The friendlies didn't lose a lot on the left, and if the left is playing it careful, that means that the ships here, they can either reinforce the left side or they can push here. The problem with pushing on the right side is that the friendlies don't have the overwhelming number that you would expect. Because there are 2 ships in the center that are not doing anything. The Chapayev is currently just moving to reinforce the left side. That Bismarck is not looking like he is going to help anyone anytime soon in any way. So that leaves about, well, the 5 ships here against the 4 enemies, so the numerical advantage isn't really that great. And the enemy is already kiting away. That's also a problem, right? If you're pushing here and the enemy is just like, the enemy is very passive here, that means you probably don't catch them and that the enemy will just overrun your base. So I feel like if the friendlies would have pushed, they needed to have pushed a lot earlier. But a lot earlier we weren't exactly sure how many ships were on the left flank, so... It's a good question. I feel like they could have tried it, but they would needed to 3 minutes earlier. Now, this Gneisenau and Nagato, they are... I mean, they're still floating, but they probably haven't much chance of engaging anyone just yet. Now, if the friendlies would have pushed together with those early on, right, it might have... Well, it could have worked a little bit. But obviously, in random battles, you don't have that much coordination, and if the Kagero could have easily just sunk those 2 guys without any trouble. Like this, those are like Gneisenau and Nagato. They don't have things like Hydro with them, they don't have radar with them. There is also a carrier, and while the Gneisenau has some decent anti-air, they are just sitting ducks in there. And yeah, if the Kagero would have just come back and parked here, he could have farmed them all day long. They don't have the tools to do anything about it. So, meanwhile, SteelHanjo has decided he'll have to defend the left side now. Because, you know, there is actually a bit of an opportunity here for the friendlies. The enemy team on the right flank has withdrawn very heavily, right? They immediately realized that they aren't going to push this side and that the other side was pushing, so they were like, we play this as defensive as possible. But that means now they are, well, in their own base, kind of. And what the friendlies can now do is they can mob up the left flank. If those guys here just all go left, they can mob up those guys and equal the score. So honestly, if the friendlies now react in the right way, it's not going to be that bad. Now, of course, down goes the Gneisenau in there, taken out by a carrier because he was, well, alone there with a Nagato. Well, I mean, if nothing else, that Nagato will at least delay those ships for Probably a few more seconds at least. And look at that, the Bismarck that was sitting like behind this island is now moving forward. It's the worst thing he could have done. Like, that's also a thing, right? If the right flank wanted to push early on, they would have needed this Bismarck to kind of come with them. And the Bismarck never made any indication that he was willing to move out. Now he's moving out. Now he's moving in the worst possible direction. He can do absolutely nothing in the north. There is, what, 6 enemies or something around there? And he would be alone. Now what the friendlies need is they need to all move left and farm what's there. Now we have the Kagero, who is currently nicely spotted and is going to beach herself, I believe. Now if the friendlies can take care of this Kagero, it would be very helpful. Now there is also 2 enemy Bismarcks pushing in. The Amagi is obviously not favored in a brawl with a Bismarck. The Amagi is better at longer ranges and the Bismarck is better at shorter ranges. So what you want to do in the Amagi is stay outside of the secondaries if possible. Because otherwise you're playing to the Bismarck's advantage. So if he can fight the Bismarcks from like 12 kilometers or so on, that should be rather reasonable. Now he's also switched to high explosive here. Probably to help with the destroyer, and maybe also to help with angled battleships. Like, I mean, that Bismarck is reasonably angled, so high explosive might just do a pretty decent job here. And well, the friendly carrier is, well, he ran away from the left side because the left side was getting pushed pretty hard. The problem is he's now running into too many other forces, so he probably have to turn around again. Unfortunately, the mopping up of the ships on the left flank is not going so well right now. Like, there's still 3 enemies around, and the friendlies are just losing more and more ships. Also looks like the enemy team hasn't wasted too much time, and we already have like Elio and the Monarch pushing in. Although there are quite a few ships that are absent there. And I'm not sure if the Bismarck will even delay them for a measurable amount of time. Now SteelHanjo is currently holding his fire. I think he was waiting for those torps and to see if those torps will do the trick and sink the enemy. I would have shot probably regardless. I mean, now he's just wasting his possible reload time. Now he's waiting, I guess, for the carrier drop. He might also be waiting for damage con to run out. Because that guy probably damage conned the orbs earlier. But yeah, I feel like if he just shot with the first salvo, it would have probably been reloaded by now. So yeah, this game is looking pretty abysmal overall there. At least this Bismarck is almost down, and probably won't get his damage con up in time, assuming he used it early against the torps. Now our Amagi here is already preloading armor piercing because he was kind of expecting to be shooting something else next, which would be a broadside Miyoko. That Miyoko, it looks like the Miyoko is slowing down, probably in order to dodge shells. The thing with slowing down like this is you wanna slow down like after the guns have been fired. Because if you're in the process of slowing down and the enemy realizes you're in the process of slowing down, then you're just an easier target to hit. And I mean, it was fully broadside too. Now SteelHanjo got a little bit away from the battle there in his attempt to stay outside of Bismarck secondaries. Not sure if would have been better to charge in there earlier. And well, I mean, he's a little bit torn here between trying to finish off the Bismarck and going for the Cleveland. Thing is, the Bismarck is pretty well angled, so it's questionable what his armor pierce, how much his armor piercing will do. Put it like this. And well, the carrier is the carrier really needs to move towards the left, but if he moves out now, he will probably be spotted by that Cleveland, which is not a good thing. Not to mention that the enemy carrier could spot him, and then this fleet pushing from the north will just shoot him. But if he sits there, then he will get overrun anyway. So he's stuck between a rock and a hard place, kinda. Finally, the Bismarck is gone. Now let's see about this Cleveland. There is, what, like 7 enemies remaining and 3 friendlies, not really the greatest odds. Let's see, maybe the next salvo can at least finish off that Cleveland. I mean, that Cleveland is still a threat to his destroyer here. That gun, that would be very helpful. I mean, there is also Baltimore pushing in, but the Baltimore is on relatively low health, and down goes the destroyer. Well, so much for that, I suppose. So on the bright side, I mean, SteelHanjo is up to 4 kills by now, which means that he's just 1 kill away from Yamamoto actually triggering. And that might be rather handy. Now let's see, if he can get the Baltimore here, that would be rather helpful. No, he can't. But hey, next salvo should do the trick. Now the carrier is pretty much screwed at this point. The enemy is coming from both sides, the carrier has no way to run. Maybe he should have tried to make a desperate attempt to escape early on. But yeah, here is the Kraken. And now we got Yamamoto's buff, which is pretty nice. And he's also alone against 5. And he only has 5 minutes left. Now you see, the thing is, even if he sinks all those guys, the enemies have already contested the kill. Then again, maybe the guys in Nagato did contest early, I don't know. If he sinks those 4 ships, the question is, can he still win? Because he can never reach the carrier in time. I mean, first he'd have to sink those 4 ships, mind you. And it's not looking like he will be able to do so right now. But you see, the carrier is just too far away. He can never reach the carrier. And that means points-wise the enemies would probably just take it, because they had ships inside the friendly camp for a while and contested it way too much. But I mean, we are probably a long way from that problem, because it looks like he's just going to go down anyway before that. Now Yamamoto Heel is still doing its best to keep him floating. But he really needs to get some devastating strikes in against those enemy ships there. And the enemy isn't showing enough broadside for that, I'm afraid. So on the bright side, his regular heal will soon be ready, and look at that! He actually found the enemy carrier. So scratch that, he can't totally sink the enemy carrier. And we still have a lot of heal going on here. Of course, after he sinks that carrier, he still has to sink 4 more ships. So we're still having a slight problem here. Area is almost down. And there is barely any healable damage left. He still has a heal charge, but he won't be able to recover much. Okay, so carrier is down. And oh, he's down to 798 points. Well, he only has to sink 4 more ships in 3 minutes with 798 points. How could this possibly go wrong? And he can't even see most of them. Now he kind of has to turn his ship around here, because, you know... Well, I mean, on the one hand, he obviously wants to survive long enough that he can get that heal off, because he will need that, and he wants to dodge enemy shells, but he only has about 2.5 minutes left. So if he doesn't go back, then he probably will never be able to spot some of them. So we are 15 seconds away from the heal, though. He also has a very inconvenient island, because he wants to turn right in order to use the guns the way they are currently turned. And the heal is going to be too late. And here we are with the results. SteelHanjo earned himself 1928 base experience, which is more than anyone on the winning side. Isn't that just a little bit sad? He also achieved a devastating strike, a Confederate, a Kraken, and a high caliber, scoring 205,000 points of damage. Well, that happened. So personally, I feel like he could have been a little bit more aggressive in this one, but then again, it's a standard battle. And the thing is, in a domination game, early aggression can get rewarded by the control of capture points, which can win you in the long run. While in a standard battle, early aggression is just oftentimes a risk not worth taking. So he kind of played it a little bit careful there on his right flank. Also, the Bismarck probably wouldn't have pushed in with them, which they would have needed. And then he went towards the best course of action, which was defending the camp. But ultimately, it just didn't work out. So I hope you enjoyed watching this, and I'll see you guys next time.